morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you're watching and listening. My name is Caleb Glick. I'm a lawyer here in the great state of Texas with the Calhoun School of Law to bring you a lot of information plenty of bad folks would rather you not have. And ladies and gentlemen, this lecture is going to be another installation into our Anti-Federalist Papers, going on number 38. So if you haven't gone back and watched 1 through 37, I would highly encourage you to do so, because understanding the Anti-Federalist Papers, in addition to the Federalist Papers, will provide you a very well-rounded, advantageous understanding of the U.S. Constitution, and understanding the U.S. Constitution will be absolutely necessary if you intend to combat any sort of lawfare waged against you, your loved ones, or your hard-earned property. So let's go ahead and jump on over to the Anti-Federalist Papers. Like I said, we're going on to number 38. Now, before that, there are a multitude of institutions from which you can get a paper and digital copy of the Anti-Federalist Papers. Go ahead and get both. While you're out there looking, if you haven't already, go ahead and get a paper and digital copy of the Federalist Papers so you can join us in comparing and contrasting the arguments for and against ratifying the U.S. Constitution. Excellent. So number 38 is titled, Some Reactions to Federalist Arguments. This was an essay by Brutus Jr. That's kind of funny. Brutus Jr., which appeared in the New York Journal on November 8, 1787. 2 articles by a countryman were written by DeWitt Clinton and appeared also in the New York Journal on January 10th and February 14th, 1788. So here's what Mr. DeWitt had to say, or Brutus Jr. He says, I have read with a degree of attention several publications which have lately appeared in favor of the new Constitution, and as far as I am able to discern, the arguments, if they can be so termed, oh, mic drop. Sometimes these men in these days were so catty. It's hard to blame the Anti-Federalists for doing that, because once you read through the Hamilton papers, I mean, sometimes Madison was definitely a purveyor of the sassy attitude, but especially when you read through Hamilton's papers, he had it coming. He was so dismissive, so disrespectful. Anyway, the arguments of most weight, which are urged in its favor, may be reduced to the two following. First, that the men who formed it were wise and experienced, that they were an illustrious band of patriots and had the happiness of their country at heart, that they were 4 months deliberating on the subject, and therefore it must be a perfect system. Second, that if the system be not received, this country will be without any government, and of consequence will be reduced to a state of anarchy and confusion, and involved in bloodshed and carnage, and in the end a government will be imposed upon us, not the result of reason and reflection, but of force and usurpation. I wonder what happened not even 80 years after this. Oh yeah, it's the war between the states that was resolved by force and usurpation, and gave rise to a government that was the result not of reason and reflection, but imposition, and after much bloodshed, confusion, and anarchy. Look at that. All the factors fit perfectly. As I do not find that either Cato or the Sentinel, Brutus or the Old Whig, or any other writer against this Constitution have undertaken a particular refutation of this new species of reasoning, I take the liberty of offering to the public through the channel of your paper the few following, this is a great word. We've seen it a couple times. I think it was in the Federalist Papers. Animadversions on the subject, and the rather because I have discovered that some of my fellow citizens have been imposed upon by it. With respect to the first, it will be readily perceived that it precludes all investigation of the merits of the proposed Constitution and leads to an adoption of the plan without inquiring whether it be good or bad. For if we are to infer the perfection of the system from the characters and abilities of the men who formed it, we may as well determine to accept it without any inquiry as with. A number of persons in this, New York, as well as the other states, have upon this principle determined to submit to it without even reading or knowing its contents. But supposing the premises from which this conclusion is drawn to be just, it then becomes essential, in order to give validity to the argument, to inquire into the characters of those who compose this body, that we may determine whether we can be justified in placing such unbounded confidence in them. It is an invidious task to call in question the characters of individuals, especially of such as are placed in illustrious stations. But when we are required implicitly to submit our opinions to those of others, from a consideration that they are so wise and good as not to be liable to error, and that too in in an affair which involves in it the happiness of ourselves and our posterity, every honest man will justify a decent investigation of characters in plain language. It is readily admitted that many individuals who compose this body were men of the first talents and integrity in the Union. It is at the same time well known to every man who is but moderately acquainted with the characters of the members that many of them are possessed of high aristocratic ideas and the most sovereign contempt of the common people. That's a pretty harsh criticism. That not a few were strongly disposed in favor of monarchy, that there were some of no small talents and no great influence, of consummate cunning and masters of intrigue, whom the war found poor or in embarrassed circumstances, and left with princely fortunes acquired in public employment, that there were others who were young, ardent, and ambitious, who wished for a government corresponding with their feelings, while they were destitute of experience. In political researches, I did not end that sentence correctly, or that statement. While they were destitute of experience in political researches, that there were not a few who were gaping in posts of honor and emolument. These we find exulting in the idea of a change which will divert places of honor, influence, and emolument into a different channel, where the confidence of the people will not be necessary to their acquirement. It is not to be wondered at that an assembly thus composed should produce a system liable to well-founded objections, and which will require very essential alterations. We are told by one of themselves, Mr. James Wilson of Philadelphia, the plan was a matter of accommodation, and it is not unreasonable to suppose that in this accommodation principles might be introduced which would render the liberties of the people very insecure. I confess I think it of no importance what are the characters of the framers of this government, and therefore should not have called them in question, if they had not been so often urged in print and in conversation in its favor. It ought to rest on its own intrinsic merit. If it is good, it is capable of being vindicated. If it is bad, it ought not to be supported. It is degrading to a free man and humiliating to a rational one to pin his faith on the sleeve of any man or body of men in an affair of such momentous importance. Go ahead and highlight that. Such an important idea. Where'd it go? There it is. It is degrading to a free man to assume, to make the argument to authority, to assume that whatever maybe dignified individuals produce is dignified in and of itself. If it's dignified, then any questions, any criticisms, any critiques will find their due answers. If it's bad, you can just amend it. There's no need to rush, though the Federalists would have you believe that the boots were dangling over the fire and we were about to get invaded by every nation known to man, but in reality, there was no reason to rush this process, especially when you're wanting to maintain such a precious government structure such as a constitutional, well, not even a constitutional republic, a union of independent, unique, sovereign constitutional republics. Such an important, precious government structure, and you want to hastily throw it away to consolidate power. That doesn't sound like a freeman. That doesn't sound like a man of the people. That sounds like a monarch. It sounds like an aristocrat. That sounds like an oligarch, a protectionist. Anyway, I digress. In answer to the second argument, I deny that we are in immediate danger of anarchy and commotions. See, I just need to keep my mouth shut because usually they say exactly what I say in the next paragraph. I'll try to hold my tongue better. Nothing but the passions of wicked and ambitious men will put us in the least danger on this head. Those who are anxious to precipitate a measure will always tell us that the present is the critical moment. Go ahead and highlight that one too. That one's a good one as well. Those who are anxious to precipitate a measure will always tell us that the present is the critical moment. These are unprecedented times. Oh, we are in immediate danger. We need to get rid of all liberty, of all freedom, of any Republican principles. Throw out every restraint that we have on the government because of these unprecedented, dangerous times. And we just have a recent occurrence that proved that principle not to be so true. Now is the time, the crisis has arrived, and the present minute must be seized. Tyrants have always made use of this plea, but nothing in our circumstances can justify it. Same playbook, same strategy, Same tactic that's been used for centuries. Don't fall for it. No matter how unprecedented the times may seem, no matter how dangerous the road may appear, don't give an inch in terms of government. Don't give an inch ever for any reason at all. That's what this gentleman is saying here. The country is in profound peace, and we are not threatened by invasions from any quarter. That's a historical fact. The governments of the respective states are in the full exercise of their powers, and the lives, the liberty, and property of individuals are protected. All present exigencies are answered by them. It is true, the regulation of trade and a competent provision for the payment of the interest of the public debt is wanting. Sure, current government, let's amend it. Don't throw it out the window. But no immediate commotion will arise from these. Time may be taken for calm discussion and deliberate conclusions. Gosh, isn't that a crazy idea? Don't, oh, what's a good expression for this one? I don't have one on standby. Don't rush to conclusions, especially when you have time to consider things, especially when it comes to political science and government. Don't rush. There is no situation so dangerous. There is no situation, even if the enemy is right at your door, banging on your door. There is no situation, no circumstance to surrender liberty for veiled security, ever for any reason, because you will never get it back until blood is shed. Time may be taken for calm discussion. Let's go ahead and read that again. Time may be taken for calm discussion and deliberate conclusions. Individuals are just recovering from the losses and embarrassment sustained by the late war. Industry and frugality are taking their station and banishing from the community idleness and prodigality. Yeah. Individuals are lessening their private debts, and several millions of the public debt is discharged by the sales of the Western Territory. There is no reason, therefore, why we should precipitately and rashly adopt a system which is imperfect or insecure. They had it going pretty good. Just in, what is that? From 77 to 87. In a decade. They were setting up for pretty fast growth, which is probably why the Federalists wanted to consolidate power, to make sure all of that fast growth was contained and monetized. There is no reason, therefore, oh, we already read that one. We may securely deliberate and propose amendments and alterations. I know it is said we cannot change for the worse, but if we act the part of wise men, we shall take care that we change for the better. It will be labor lost if, after all our pains, we are in no better circumstances than we were before. Yeah. I have seen enough to convince me very fully that the new Constitution is a very bad one, and 100-fold worse than our present government. Go ahead and highlight that. And if that upsets you, let it upset you. Because this is an individual who, in 1787, before the U.S. Constitution was even adopted, was even implemented, is perfectly prophesying all of the tyranny that we now complain about today. Just admit, like even Madison had, the father of the U.S. Constitution, that the U.S. Constitution is a bad document. It is chocked full of legal ambiguity so that wicked men like Hamilton could expand the federal government scope to as far and as wide as they desired. It's okay. Just admit it is a bad document. Don't be scared. And I do not perceive that any of the writers in favor of it, although some of them use a vast many fine words and show a great deal of learning, yes, Hamilton did have quite the vocabulary, yes, Madison did have quite the vocabulary. Jay was a little more brash, but they had some very polished vocabulary. They knew how to articulate themselves. A favor of it, or able to remove any of the objections which are made against it. Mr. James Wilson indeed speaks very highly of it, but we have only his word for its goodness, and nothing is more natural than for a mother to speak well of her own family, however ordinary it may be. Ouch. He seems, however, to be pretty honest in one thing where he says, quote, "It is the nature of man to pursue his own interest in preference to the public good." Now that is a good doctrine, Mr. Wilson. Let's go ahead and highlight that. That is the only thing we can trust man to do. That is the only thing. That is the only aspect of human nature that we can trust to consistently partake, that we will serve our own interest before anyone else's. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because by serving your own interest in a capitalist system, kind of like what I had argued in I think it was called it was Economics 101, A Plea for Capitalism, if I remember the title of the lecture correctly. Trust everyone to serve their own self-interest. When they serve their own self-interest, they make a product or a service that others like. They get resources. In exchange, the other person gets something that they deeply desire and that they enjoy. Both win. Use the inclination to serve your own self-interest to the best way that it possibly can be. Don't try to force everyone to serve a common good, to serve a public good. It never works, it never has worked, and it never will work. Back to the paper. Like I said, it's so difficult to try to keep my tongue. "It is the nature of man to pursue his own interest in preference to the public good. For they tell me he is a lawyer, and his interest then makes him for the new government, for it will be a noble thing for lawyers." Oh boy. "Besides, he appears to have an eye to some high place under it, since he speaks with great pleasure of the places of honor and emolument being diverted to a new channel by this change of system. As to Mr. Publius, the Federalist, I have read a great many of his papers, and I really cannot find out what he would be at. He seems to me as if he was going to write a history, so I have concluded to wait and buy one of his books when they come out. The only thing I can understand from him, as far as I have read, is that it is better to be united than divided, that a great many people are stronger than a few, and that Scotland is better off since the union with England than before. Try telling that to the Scots. And I think he proves too very clearly that the fewer nations there are in the world, the fewer disputes there will be about the law of nations, and the greater number that are joined in one government, the abler will they be to raise ships and soldiers, and the less need for fighting. But I do not learn that anybody denies these matters, or that they have anything to do with the new Constitution. Indeed, I am at a loss to know whether Mr. Publius means to persuade us to return back to the old government and make ourselves as happy as Scotland has by its union, or to accept the new Constitution and get all the world to join with us, so as to make one large government. It would certainly, if what he says is true, be very convenient for Nova Scotia and Canada, and, for aught I know, his advice will have great weight with them. I have also read several other of the pieces which appear to be wrote by some other little authors, and by people of little consequence, though they seem to think themselves men of importance, and take upon them grand names such as Caesar. Now, Mr. Caesar does not depend so much on reasoning as upon bullying. Probably Mr. Hamilton. He abuses the people very much, and if he spoke in our neighborhood as impudently as he writes in the newspapers, I question whether he would come off with whole bones. From the manner he talks of the people, he certainly cannot be one of them himself. I imagine he has lately come over from some old country where they are all lords and no common people. If so, it would be as well for him to go back again as to meddle himself with our business, since he holds such a bad opinion of us. Signed, a countryman. The Federalist, as he terms himself, I think that's supposed to be he, as he terms himself, or Publius, puts one in mind of some of the gentlemen of the long robe when hard pushed in a bad cause with a rich client. They frequently say a great deal which does not apply, but yet, if it will not convince the judge nor jury, may perhaps help to make them forget some part of the evidence, embarrass their opinion, and make the audience stare, besides increasing the practice. Signed again, the countryman. Excellent. So if you have any questions about what was said in number 38, maybe questions about what was said in the preceding papers, or if there's a topic you'd like me to cover in a future lecture, go ahead and post those down in the comments, because the entire purpose of the Calhoun School of Law is to provide you with the necessary skills and information to combat any sort of lawfare that will be waged against you, your loved ones, or your hard-earned property. So please, if you have any questions at all, go ahead and post them down in the comments. Excellent. So my name is Caleb Glick. I'm a lawyer here in the great state of Texas with the Calhoun School of Law to bring you a lot of information that plenty of bad folks would rather you not have. I hope you enjoyed this lecture, and if not, while you're down in the comments, go ahead and let me know how I can do better so I can best serve that purpose of helping you. I hope you'll have a wonderful day, and I'm not sure what the topic for the next lecture is going to be, but I'll do my best to make it as informative and entertaining as this one, if not more so. Regardless of the topic of the next lecture, until I see y'all then, I bid you all farewell.